The big question that people have is, first of all, are the Americans going to use ground troops? Because the only way that you can defeat Iran is by using ground troops, okay? That's a big question we'll look at in the next few weeks. Will America send its army, 500,000, 2 million soldiers to topple the government? Okay, that's question number one. Question number two, nuclear weapons. If you're losing a war, would you choose to use nuclear weapons? Okay, that's another big question that we have, okay? Another big question that we have is who gets involved? Because this situation is so dire that Europe, okay, specifically Germany, France, and Britain are talking about entering this war. And guess what? If that happens, it is possible that Russia and China will also enter this war on the side of the Iranians. This is World War III. Because of the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, because of the importance of the Middle East, everyone has to get involved at some point. And we're going to use game theory to really try to understand what's happening on the ground and where this could lead us. There are American bases all over the Middle East. And originally, these bases were established to protect them from basically their own people. Okay? These are monarchies that were imposed on these nations by the Anglo-American Empire, the British first, and then the Americans came to support these monarchies. And so they provide defense. But then you're like, wait a minute here. I mean, didn't we just say that these American bases can't actually defend these people, that they're exposed? And the answer is yes, that's true. But remember that the American military was built during the Cold War. And the Cold War was a war between the Soviet Union and America. And so the Cold War was defined as something called MAD, mutually assured destruction, because both had nuclear weapons, okay? So they didn't really go to war against each other. And so in other words, these bases aren't really meant to defend these nations from other enemies. They're really meant to impose American authority in the Middle East, okay? And it's the idea of this. It's the idea that empire, it is really an image. It is a hallucination. It's just an idea. Empire is it's an aura of invincibility and invisibility, okay? If you fear it, then you obey it. But it's not really designed to fight a war, okay? And so that's why we have this absurd situation. And because there are so many bases in the GCC, that gives the Iranians the perfect pretext to attack them in order to destroy the GCC economy, which will destroy the American empire. So this is how the war is shaping out, okay? So the red is the Israelis and the Americans. The yellow are the Iranians. And as you can see, the Iranians are attacking everywhere. Primarily Israel, okay? But also, as you can see, a lot of focus on Bahrain and Qatar. And again, the intention is to destabilize the economy and the government. Okay? It's to try to get as much instability as possible. Okay? And as you can see, the Americans and the Israelis are focused on Tehran. And so the Americans and the Israelis use something we call shock and awe. And the very idea of shock and awe is you decapitate the enemy. If you cut off the head, the body will fall down. Okay? The problem, though, is, again, the Iranians see this as a religious war. And so the Iranians have announced total war. Okay? And so what this means is that right now, command and control in Iran is decentralized. There's no one person telling everyone what to do. Every region has its own orders, has its own strategy. And so if you knock out Tehran, everyone else keeps on going. So if you take off the head, it doesn't change anything. Okay? But unfortunately, the Israelis and the Americans use this as a military doctrine. Military doctrine just means how you design your military for what purpose. And so even though the Americans seem like an invincible army, they are not equipped to fight a 21st century war against drones, against destabilization, against religious fanatics. Okay, they're just not, right? But unfortunately, because of military doctrine, they're going to keep on attacking Tehran. Now, the great irony of all this is that the Iranians who will be most supportive of regime change, are actually in the cities because they are educated, they're progressive. The people who are most fundamentally against you, will fight you to the death, are religious fanatics, the Shia militants living in the rural areas. Okay? So this is a really silly thing where you are actually destroying those who will most likely support you, and you're leaving alone those who are most likely to commit jihad against you. So another idea that I want you guys to understand is the idea of asymmetry. Asymmetry, all right? So what is asymmetry? Asymmetry means that the two sides are choosing to fight different wars using different techniques because one is much stronger than the other, okay? America is a great empire. It has unlimited resources. It has the USD. It controls the world, right? Iran is a country that has been under economic sanctions for the past 45 years. It's poor. Its technology is very limited, okay? But as we learn in this class, actually, those nations that are poor actually have more energy. They're more open, and they're more cohesive. All right, so let me give an example. This is what we call the Shahad drones. Shahad drones. Each of these drones costs $50,000 at most, okay? At most. It can go as cheap as $35,000 US dollars. But one of them is $50,000. As you can see, you can fit a lot of these drones to a truck that can go anywhere in Iran. And they can hide anywhere, all right? So the thing to understand is, first of all, these drones are cheap. They're easy to make. They make about 500 a day, okay? And estimates are about there's 80,000 right now that the Iranians have. So they can go on for a long, long time, okay? And one of these drones, again, can knock out a desalination plant. It can knock out an oil field. It can knock out a hotel. It can do a lot of damage. And it's easily transportable. You can hide it anywhere. You can use it from anywhere, okay? And that's what the Iranians are using as an offensive weapon. And how do the Americans defend against this? They use something called the THAAD, right? Right, guys. This is what they use, THAAD. THAAD stands for Thermal High Altitude Air Defense. And they also have like Patriot systems. There's a lot, okay? The thing that you need to know about the system is it's really expensive. This missile, guys, costs $1 million. $1 million. So there's this $50,000 drone coming your way, and you throw a $1 million missile at it, okay? And often these missiles miss, so you have to throw 2 or 3 missiles at it, okay? So you're spending $2 to $3 million on each $50,000 that the Iranians spend. That's kind of silly. Second thing you'll notice is that this thing is really big and really slow. And therefore, you can't really move it around. Therefore, it's pretty easy for the Iranians to spot where this is and attack it. And then when these things blow up, that's a lot of money, guys. Then you're like, what? But this makes no sense. You know the Iranians have drones. They've had drones for like 10 years. You've also seen drones used in the Russia-Ukraine war to devastating effect. Why don't the Americans know this? Why did they prepare? Okay, and again, it has to do with military doctrine. Because military doctrine determines how you fight a war, it determines on your bureaucracy, and it determines how you spend your resources, okay? And unfortunately, the Americans are used to fighting something called the Cold War, right? And the Cold War, because you can actually fight the war. You can actually kill each other because then people use nuclear weapons. The Cold War was about flexing, okay? You see how big and powerful I am? Me! Okay? That's all it was.
Power on paper is not always power in reality. You might see huge bases, jets, and flags and assume that side is unbeatable. But if their whole strategy is built for an old kind of war, they can be surprisingly fragile when the battlefield changes. Never judge strength only by size and noise. Look at how flexible, patient, and prepared someone is for the actual challenge in front of them. In this age, the smart side is the one that turns every move of its enemy into a financial and psychological burden. That cheap tools used creatively can drain a richer opponent who is forced to respond with extremely expensive systems that do not always work perfectly. Apply this mindset in your own life. Stop copying the big players blindly and start asking, what small, smart steps can I take that give me the most benefit for the least wasted energy? You should also notice how arrogance blinds people and nations. When someone is used to winning with intimidation, they often ignore warnings, repeat old mistakes, and call any new tactic unfair, instead of humbling themselves and adapting. Protect yourself from this disease by staying a student, admit when your method is outdated, learn from others, even those you dislike, and change before reality forces you to in a painful way. Finally, remember that shock and awe is not a healthy way to run your life either. Real success is built on quiet consistency, not on one big dramatic moment that you hope will solve everything. Whether in faith, family, or work, choose the path of steady improvement, smart planning, and resilience, so that when big tests come, you are not relying on show and image, but on real inner strength and well-practiced habits.